Hey everyone, welcome to D Time Season 1, Episode 50, Leveling Up. And no, I'm not talking about video games. I'm talking about just leveling up in life, advancing in life. And again, part of a big reason why I started this podcast of just wanting to better myself, wanting to grow, and really overcome a character challenge of mine, and that's completing things. And not to say that I've never completed anything. Listen to the pilot episode of this podcast, and I'll go into more detail. But I've completed things, but as someone who considers himself like a creative person, it's easy for me to get worked up and get inspired. And sometimes, more often than not, those inspirations, those projects, they don't get finished, because either that flame of inspiration is burnt out, or just other things kind of take precedent over the project. And so I really wanted to go after completing something and growing from that. And so the topic of leveling up came up, and I thought about the different things that we do to kind of grow as individuals and to advance in life, whether it be professionally, whether it be personally. And there's one person that came to mind. His name is Danny Garner, who I'll sit down in part two. Danny is someone who I've seen personally just completely grow in a big way, just in the short time that I got to know him here in Seattle. And he's by the time of this episode airing, I think he'll be in Chicago, helping to serve the Chicago International Christian Church, and just really proud of him, man. Just really cool to be able to see his growth. So I wanted to talk to him about kind of what helped spur that growth in him, the challenges that he's had, what's kind of helped him. Maybe something that we all can take away, and because I believe, I think we all desire to grow. We all desire to move forward. Maybe we need a little inspiration to kind of dream bigger. But it's always good to have practicals and tips to kind of help further that growth. And so he's a great person that I think to talk about leveling up and growing as a person. So I'm excited for you guys to hear our conversation, my conversation with Danny. And as always, in the comments, what are some things that have helped you grow as an individual? What are some areas maybe you're looking to grow in? Again, it'll be the year 2020 when these episodes go live. And I know, as always, there's a lot of hopes and dreams and goals that people set out for themselves for the year. What are some of those goals? What are you looking forward the most to growing in your character, or growing professionally, personally, or in a relationship? I want to hear those, and maybe we all can learn some valuable tips and tricks to grow in those areas. So stick around for part two, where I sit down with Danny. Peace. Hey, welcome back to D Time, Season 1, Episode 50, Leveling Up. I'm here with my good friend Danny. Danny, thank you so much, bro, for taking the time to chat with me.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So before we dive into the topic, why don't you just take a couple minutes to introduce yourself for those that are listening?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my name is Danny Garner. I am from Chicago, Illinois, and also Oceanside, California. And I've had the honor to travel throughout most of America and a few countries as a Christian minister and missionary. So I'm grateful to be here. Now I'm currently in Los Angeles getting ready for the next big move to Chicago to go and preach the word out there. So I'm really excited.
Awesome. Yeah, so today's topic is leveling up or growing. And in part one, I talked about, we all grow from time to time, or we should be growing. And some people maybe have a hard time with that, or some folks, have a hard time kind of learning or figuring out, the right mindset to go about growth. So for you, when you think about where you were at as a person a year ago, what stands out to you the most?
A year ago, for me, my life was in a very different place. I was in Seattle, Washington, and at the time I was engaged to be married, and it was a very intense time for me as a lot went down and unfolded. And if I was to think about, to answer your question, about a year ago, for me, me, what stands out to me the most was really how much I did not understand God's grace.
Mm-hmm.
I fully was in a way naive. I had my own perspective of it, and especially with everything that was happening in my life that I was not aware of at the time, and I had signs and I had thoughts, but to see what unfolded within that year leading into 2019 this year was really incredible. And just to see how God really saved me and really, really dug deep into my heart and really purged me out of the dark depths that I was in, and really allowed me to really see and recognize how much he really loved me was very vital and is vital to really who I am right now. So when I think about what stands out to me the most about a year ago, it was my lack of understanding of grace and my lack of really recognizing how God was trying to save me at that moment.
That's awesome. Yeah. I know, usually typically when we think about, maybe our past or things that have changed, there's a lot of things that we may have, things that we maybe wish we would have done or actions we would have taken. So for you, if you would, what's something that you would say to yourself, back a year ago?
A year ago, what I would have said, because I honestly wouldn't want to change everything that God did and everything that I chose to do. I think it was totally what was necessary and to make me who I am today, without a doubt. But if I was to share anything with my past self, I would really encourage myself. I think ultimately that's what we all need, is
Right.
encouragement, a gentle push. And I would have just said, if I was to say something to my past self a year ago, I would have said, recognize what God is doing in your life and run to the direction that God is leading you.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that moment, I thought my life was going one direction. I was engaged. I was looking into houses with my fiance. I was leading a ministry in Seattle, Washington, and totally thinking about my future, thinking about my family, thinking about someday, potentially having kids in the future. When you're engaged, you're dreaming so much.
Right.
And then literally about 2 months later, the dream was over. It ended abruptly, and it really devastated my heart, but it was exactly what I needed. So I would totally tell myself to run the direction that God is leading me, because in the end, it's going to be perfect and exactly what I need to learn.
Yeah, it's awesome. So in terms of, growing, since we're, on the topic, from your perspective, what would you say is the hardest thing to do in terms of, just kind of growing?
Well, character is the hardest thing to change, right? I
Yeah.
mean, how you grow up really has a direct influence on how you will carry out decisions in your life. And, growing up for me in Chicago, Illinois, I was very much so in a very bad environment with very, very serious drug addicts, and criminals, and things of that nature. And as a result, like my childhood was very much so. I went to more funerals than I even had birthdays my first 10 years, and
Wow.
really saw a lot of bad things unfold in my own house. And as a result of that, my character was very much so, as youngins say today, weak sauce. I was super shy, introverted kid, and I think for me it was very hard for me to change my character. But my dad really poured into me when I moved to California and really made me get out of myself. He bought me a little Nokia, said, go outside and you make friends and you call me if you need anything. And he taught me how to be out of myself, which helped me be more social, helped me trust more, because I was very non-trusting based on the environment I was in Chicago. And I also had to grow up fairly quickly in Oceanside, where my dad really allowed me to and molded me to become more of a man, of course, as I grew with age. But I would say character is the hardest thing to change without a doubt. And to answer your question more fully, I think when it comes to growth, the hardest thing about it is understanding that it's not comfortable. And when it's not comfortable, it's easy to stop changing.
Yeah.
So change isn't just like to recognize that you need to, it's to acknowledge that you need to, one, commit yourself to the change and surround yourself with people who would hold you accountable to see it through, that want what's best for you as well. And that's ultimately part of the reason why God established that we would have a church instead of a singular personal relationship with God by itself. We have a family of people that are in each other's lives, guiding each other, strengthening each other, helping us find strength in God, which is, of course, the most important thing to change and to lead into change, is being spiritual. So just that character of how someone is raised is definitely the hardest thing.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's true. That's so true. So I always like to ask, for the last question, I ask everyone the same question. And it doesn't necessarily have to do with this topic, but for you, what's the best piece of advice that someone has shared with you?
The best piece of advice. There's a lot. Praise God, being in a church of true Christians, I get a lot of advice.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bible really teaches that with much advice, victory. For me, I was, as a younger Christian, I was very jealous without a lot of knowledge. So, and I still haven't learned. Ultimately, what I did was I made a lot of decisions and was very much so not sure, but I tried to do things out of my own confidence. So one day I got advice about it because I was planning to, actually, it was even this year, about to move to Los Angeles, and I was getting advice. And I didn't want to go into a ministry role without feeling that I had proved myself in some way, that I had the mental confidence that I could do it. That was my mindset. So in my mind, I was thinking I needed confidence. Like I needed to feel like I can do this. But I got advice about it, and I got, corrected in my mindset. And one of the things I was told was confidence is not what the Bible teaches us to have. The Bible teaches us to have faith. And faith has nothing to do with yourself, nothing to do with somebody else, nothing to do with a situation, nothing to do with your environment or your circumstances. Faith has total irrelevancy to who a person is, but it's all about God himself and what God can do through you. And when I heard that, it seems so minimal, but really it forces me to be spiritual. And more than anything, faith and my prayers have been the biggest thing I made sure I went after in 2019. I was really forced to, with everything that happened in my heart last year. I was forced to be more spiritual, to get a place where I dedicate to God and pray, and really to focus in on growing in my faith and praying to God to stretch my faith, increase my faith, which is always uncomfortable. But in the end, it works. So ultimately, to simplify it all, I was taught, with advice to place zero confidence in myself or anything in this world or of this world, but rather have faith and trust that God is the one who provides and meets all my needs and is going to make sure that whatever role I'm given, there's a victory in the end.
That's awesome. That's powerful, man. Well, Danny, bro, thank you so much, man, for taking the time out and sharing about this topic, man. I really appreciate it. For anyone listening, you can follow the podcast at D-Time Podcast at Twitter and Instagram. Send us a comment on maybe thoughts or questions that you have. And Danny, thanks again, bro. I know you're going to do great things in Chicago, and excited to hear all about what God does over in the Midwest, man. Thanks again for taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. David, thank you for inviting me and having me be a guest on the show. I'm rooting for you. I'm praying for you. Thank you so much for being a great friend, man. I remember at times back in Seattle, we definitely got to hang out soon.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to come up there and visit, or come out there to Chicago with me. We got to get together, bro. So I'm pulling for you. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And I'm really excited to see how it all turns out next year.
Awesome. Thanks, bro. All right, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, bro.